Beloved, listen carefully before a mighty gift descends into your life. There are unmistakable signs, not written in the stars, not shouted by the world, but whispered within the chambers of your own being. For everything you are about to receive begins, not in the outer world, but in the secret theater of consciousness. Life often appears most unsettled just before something extraordinary breaks through. Many people misread these moments. They see the storms, the resistance, the sudden closing of doors, and they call it defeat. Yet in truth, these very disruptions are the labor pains of a greater birth. The turbulence that precedes a blessing is not the enemy. It is the herald. Think of the seed hidden beneath the soil. For weeks it lies in darkness, unseen, untouched, as though nothing were happening. Yet in that hidden silence, life is at work. The moment before it emerges into the light, the soil must break. The earth above it shifts, cracks, and sometimes appears violent. To an unknowing eye, it looks as though the seed is being crushed. But in reality, it is being liberated. The breaking of the soil is the sign that new life is pushing forth. So it is with your life. When something big is preparing to unfold, your world may look like it is falling apart. Relationships might become strained. Long-standing habits may no longer satisfy. Situations you once depended on may suddenly crumble. To the outer mind, this feels like loss. But in the deeper order of things, this is movement. The old forms cannot remain intact when the new life presses to be born. Every great breakthrough is preceded by a shaking. Why? Because you cannot pour new wine into old skins. If you are to receive something larger, your current container, your mindset, your circumstances, even the people around you, must stretch or break to make room for what is coming. The very discomfort you feel is evidence that expansion is underway. Notice how this sign often arrives disguised as resistance. The very area you are believing for growth, it may suddenly seem more difficult than ever. The financial breakthrough you are preparing for may first appear as bills piling higher. The love you long for may seem further away. The career opportunity you envision may look blocked by obstacles. Do not be deceived by appearances. Resistance is not denial, it is the friction of transformation. Just as the bow must pull back before the arrow can fly, life pulls you into pressure so that you may be propelled into promise. Another sign is the increase of inner restlessness. You may feel uncomfortable in the life you once tolerated. The routines, the conversations, the environments that once seemed normal now feel too small, too limiting. This discomfort is not punishment, it is preparation. Just as a bird outgrows its nest, you are being urged to rise into something greater. That holy dissatisfaction is not a curse. It is the announcement that expansion is already on the horizon. And sometimes the most puzzling sign of all appears silence. Nothing seems to move. Prayers feel unanswered. Opportunities seem scarce. It is as though the heavens have gone quiet. But this quietness is not absence, it is gestation. Just as the womb holds the child in perfect stillness before the cry of birth, your unseen blessing is being fashioned in silence before it bursts into form. The mind, untrained, sees this silence as delay. But the wise know it is timing. The invisible work is often the longest part of the process. By the time it becomes visible, the greater portion has already been accomplished. So when life feels most unsettled, when you are pressed on every side, when silence seems louder than answers, know that these are not signs of abandonment, but indicators of nearness. The great unfolding always announces itself first through disturbance, pressure, and shaking. The greatest evidence that something magnificent is on its way is not found in outer events, but in the transformation of your inner state. Long before your blessing appears to the world, you begin to sense a change within yourself. This is the sacred signal, the true confirmation that the invisible has already been set in motion. The world teaches us to measure progress by what we can see: bank accounts, doors opening, opportunities coming forth. Yet in truth, every external shift is only a shadow of an internal one. What you call reality is simply the reflection of your consciousness. Therefore, the first sign that your life is turning toward greater things will always be the subtle but undeniable change in your inner atmosphere. This shift may appear as a quiet assurance, a sense of calm certainty that cannot be explained. You may look at your current circumstances, which show no outward improvement, and yet something within whispers, it is already done. That inner knowing is not imagination in the sense of fantasy. It is imagination in the sense of spiritual evidence. It is the seed pressing through the soil of your being, letting you know that the harvest is near. At times, this shift expresses itself as new thoughts arising in your mind. Ideas you never considered before begin to appear. You may feel drawn toward actions, people, or places that align with your unspoken desire. It feels as though your consciousness is subtly reorganizing itself. This is no accident. Your inner state is adjusting to match the reality you are moving toward. And in that adjustment, life outside of you must eventually conform. You may also notice an unusual calmness where anxiety once lived. The worry that used to trouble you loses its power, as though you are detached from the outcome. This is not indifference, it is confidence. It is the quiet authority of one who has already seen the end in imagination and now walks steadily through the middle. That peace is not weakness. It is the mark of possession. You possess it inwardly long before you touch it outwardly. For some, the shift is felt as a change in perception. The very things that used to discourage you no longer carry the same weight. You may look at a closed door and feel no despair, because within you, the door is already open. You may hear negative voices, but remain unmoved, because within, a greater voice speaks louder. This is the transformation of vision. Your inner eye begins to behold what the outer eye cannot yet detect. There are also moments when the shift feels like sudden gratitude. You give thanks for something you cannot yet touch, because inwardly it feels as though it is already yours. This gratitude is not forced. It rises naturally, as though your spirit knows more than your senses. That thanksgiving is not mere optimism. It is spiritual recognition. Gratitude in advance is the language of possession. The most important aspect of this inner shift is that it comes quietly. It does not always announce itself with great emotion or fireworks. Sometimes it is as subtle as a soft assurance in the background of your awareness. But pay attention, for it is in that still small voice that the most powerful confirmations arrive. So, when you notice a deep change within, when restlessness turns to peace, when fear gives way to quiet certainty, when your mind seems to align with unseen possibility, understand that you are witnessing the first evidence of what is to come. The invisible always precedes the visible, and the inner shift is the truest signal that your greater blessing is already prepared. When something new and vast is preparing to enter your life, one of the clearest signs is the loosening of your attachment to what has been. This detachment does not always come with warning. Sometimes it slips in quietly, other times it arrives like a storm, tearing away what no longer serves you. Yet in every case, it is the necessary process of making room. For you cannot hold the new while still clutching tightly to the old. Detachment is often misunderstood. Many see it as rejection or loss. They think they are being punished when familiar people leave, when old desires fade, when former ways of living no longer satisfy. But in truth, detachment is preparation. It is not life against you. It is life clearing the field so that the greater harvest may appear. Think of a tree in autumn. Its leaves fall, not because the tree is dying, but because it is preparing for another season. If the leaves remained clung to the branches, there would be no space for new buds, no room for spring's growth. In the same way, when you begin to feel disinterested in things you once pursued with passion, do not despair. Recognize it as the gentle pruning of your inner being. That which no longer aligns with your higher purpose must drop away, for your greater season requires fresh space. Detachment often feels like a form of inner death. The habits that once defined you lose their appeal. The relationships that once anchored you begin to loosen. The ambitions you once held tightly begin to dissolve. To the surface mind, this can feel like emptiness, but that emptiness is holy. It is the sacred clearing, the divine pause, the space in which the new creation is free to enter. There are moments when detachment comes suddenly, with dramatic change. A job may end. A friendship may collapse. A door you leaned on for years may shut without explanation. In such times, the temptation is to cling tighter, to resist the change, to cry out for what is slipping away. Yet the truth is that what leaves is not meant to carry you forward. It was for a season, and now the season has shifted. The old form cannot travel with you into the new expression. At other times, detachment is quiet and gradual. You simply notice that you no longer feel the same pull. You may sit in familiar surroundings and feel like a stranger. The conversations you once enjoyed seem shallow. The routines that once satisfied you feel empty. This is not depression. It is transition. Your spirit has already stepped into another dimension of life, and the outer world is now lagging behind. The sense of disconnection is the evidence that you are moving into something greater. Detachment is not about losing. It is about aligning. When the old falls away, it is not because it was evil, but because it has completed its purpose. The chapter has ended, and a new one waits to be written. If you try to hold on to the old story, you only delay the unfolding of the new. One of the most profound aspects of detachment is that it often feels like loss to the senses, but like freedom to the soul. In the moment, you may weep over what is leaving, but deep within, there is a strange relief. You breathe lighter. You sense a widening space. That space is not emptiness. It is readiness. It is life saying, you are being prepared to hold more. And so, when detachment comes, do not see it as abandonment. See it as the signal that the next form of your life is demanding entrance. The old must bow before the new can rise. The shedding is sacred, for it clears the way for the greater gift that is already pressing into manifestation. Everything you will ever hold in your hand begins first in the unseen garden of imagination. Before any house is built, there is a design in the mind of the architect. Before any book is written, there is a vision in the heart of the author. Before any great invention alters the world, it is first a picture, a whisper, an image within consciousness. The outer world is only the harvest. Imagination is the soil in which the seed is planted. Imagination is not daydreaming in the shallow sense. It is the creative womb of reality. What you dwell upon inwardly with conviction must eventually clothe itself in form. When you receive an inspired picture in your mind, when you feel yourself living in the end of your desire, you have already planted the seed. The invisible has been sown, and in its own appointed season, the visible will appear. Consider how every farmer understands this principle. He does not look into the field the day after sowing and despair that no harvest is visible. He knows the process is invisible first. He trusts the seed, though hidden, to be alive. He tends the soil, waters the ground, and guards the field because he believes in the unseen growth. In the same way, When you cultivate the garden of your imagination, when you rehearse and embody the picture of your desire, you are tending to the seed of your destiny. The challenge for most is that they dismiss imagination as fantasy. They look at their mental images and say, "This is not real." Yet what they call real is only yesterday's imagination solidified. Every structure, every invention, every achievement you admire today once existed as a faint image in someone's mind. The difference between fantasy and creation is persistence. A fleeting thought passes like a shadow, but a nourished image, felt with conviction, becomes flesh. Imagination also carries with it the law of kind. You reap what you sow. If the seed planted is fear, worry, or lack, then the harvest will reflect those seeds. If the seed planted is abundance, love, and certainty, then the harvest will take on those qualities. You cannot plant thorns and expect roses. Likewise, you cannot dwell inwardly on failure while expecting outward success. The law is faithful. The seed always reproduces after its kind. What makes imagination so sacred is that it is the one domain no circumstance can govern. No matter your outward limitations, within your mind you are free to see, to feel, to create. A prisoner can imagine freedom, and that imagination is the first step toward it. A sick body can imagine wholeness, and that image is the beginning of healing. A poor man can imagine abundance, and that vision is the seed of wealth. The outer chains cannot bind the inner eye. You may ask, how do I know if my imagination is truly planting a seed? You know by the feeling it stirs. If the picture you hold within you begins to feel real, if you catch yourself smiling in the silence, if your body responds with peace or excitement, then you have sown deeply. The seed has taken root. Emotion is the water that feeds imagination, and conviction is the sunlight that draws it upward. It is important to understand that the imagination does not work by effort or strain. Seeds do not struggle to grow. They respond naturally to the environment provided. In the same way, when you gently and consistently return to the image of your fulfilled desire, without desperation, you are providing the perfect soil. The more natural the picture feels, the quicker it must emerge. So, imagination is not merely a pastime. It is the workshop of creation, the unseen blueprint of everything that will ever come into your life. To honor your imagination is to honor the divine process of manifestation. Every mighty gift that life offers begins not with evidence outside, but with the quiet, persistent image inside. The final sign that something great is nearing your life is not always noise, evidence, or outward confirmation. It is the quiet invitation to trust the invisible process. For the most powerful transformations are not seen in their making. They unfold in silence, beyond the senses, hidden from the eye, until the appointed moment. Trust is the bridge between what is unseen and what is seen. Without it, you live in doubt, constantly digging up the seed to check if it has sprouted. But when you trust, you allow the seed to remain buried, undisturbed, until it breaks through in its own time. The process of manifestation requires this confidence in the unseen, for impatience and fear only choke the growth. Think of the child in the womb. For months there is no visible sign to the outer world, yet within, a perfect life is forming. The mother does not open her body each day to check if the child is developing. She trusts the process. She nourishes, she waits, she believes. And in due season, the invisible work reveals itself. So it is with every desire that has been planted in the garden of your imagination. Once conceived inwardly, the invisible begins its perfect work. Your task is not to force, but to trust. This trust often feels like rest. It is the letting go of anxious striving, the release of constant questioning. When will it come? How will it come? Through whom will it come? These questions belong to the outer mind, the reasoning faculty that fears what it cannot control. But creation does not unfold through worry. It unfolds through faith. When you truly believe the invisible is working, you stop demanding proof. You walk with an inner assurance that the harvest is already determined. Trust also requires you to look beyond appearances. The outer world may seem stubborn, even contradictory. Nothing may appear to be moving in your favor. In fact, it may look as though circumstances are shifting against you. Yet this is where trust reveals its power, for the invisible process often disguises itself in opposition. The very obstacles you face are not signs of failure, but instruments of alignment. What looks like delay is often rearrangement. What feels like loss is often redirection. The visible world is only the stage, but the invisible process is the author of the play. To trust the unseen is to stand firmly in the unseen reality, even when the senses deny it. You walk as though the promise is fulfilled, not because you see it with your eyes, but because you know it with your spirit. This knowing is deeper than logic, deeper than evidence, deeper than proof. It is the quiet conviction that the invisible has already done its work, and the visible is only catching up. There will be times when trust is tested. The silence may grow long, the waiting may feel heavy, and the temptation to surrender to doubt may whisper to you. But those who hold steady in trust discover that the invisible is more faithful than the visible. Life is always unfolding in harmony with the seed that has been planted. The timing may not match the mind's urgency, but it always matches the heart's readiness. Trust, then, is not passive. It is not resignation. It is active faith, an inner stance of assurance, a willingness to live as though the unseen were already present. To trust in the invisible process is to declare by your very being, "It is finished, though I do not yet see it. It is mine, though I do not yet touch it." And in that declaration, you align yourself perfectly with the rhythm of creation. Beloved, hear this truth: nothing is withheld from you. The moment you imagine and feel it real, it is already yours in the unseen. What you call waiting is not delay, but the unfolding of the invisible into the visible. The shaking, the inner shift, the detachment, the vision, and the quiet trust. These are not random events. They are the unmistakable signs that you are standing at the threshold of fulfillment. Do not be deceived by appearances. The world may shout, "It is not here." Circumstances may whisper, "It is impossible." But within you is the greater voice declaring, "It is finished." Hold to that voice. Stand in that assurance. Walk as though the gift were already in your hands, for in truth, it already is. The outer world is but a mirror faithfully reflecting your inner conviction. And when your inner state is fixed, the outer world cannot help but conform. So rest, rejoice, and know that the process is complete. You are not striving toward your blessing. You are awakening to it. The great gift you seek is not coming to you. It is coming through you. And the moment you accept it within, the whole world must bow to reveal it without.